As a country, Kenya's commitment to the environment is unwavering. We acknowledge the Sustainable Development Goals and our Agenda 2030. And we also acknowledge that these cannot be realized if we leave our environment out of the equation. The environment holds and can provide solutions to most of the challenges we face as humanity. And in this regard, Kenya has firmly anchored the environmental pillar in our country's blueprints, and that is our Kenyan Vision 2030, as well as our Big Four agenda. Kenya has commenced action to tackle the triple planetary crises, and that is the Climate Change Act and the National Climate Change Action Plans by both our national as well as our county governments. These are examples of the legislative action that we are taking as a country. My administration has also put in place policies to address biodiversity, loss, pollution, protection of our forests, and the sustainable use of our environmental resources, including our oceans. Kenya is the world's environmental capital, and we are proud to host the United Nations Environmental Programme headquarters in our country. This being the only UN headquarters in the Global South. I want to take this opportunity to assure UNEP and the United Nations family that we in Kenya are committed to continuing to support UNEP's activities in Kenya. My administration pledges to improve infrastructure and general services, even as we work together with the United Nations Second Committee to ensure these institutions are resourced adequately in order to achieve their mandate. So, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to end my remarks by thanking all member states of the United Nations, the President of the current United Nations Environmental Assembly, Mr. Sveng Rotevatn, the Executive Director of UNEP, Ms. Inger Anderson, and all her staff for their commitment and determination to see UNEP succeed. I also wish to take this opportunity to call upon all the people and nations of the world to increase their commitments and actions towards safeguarding our environment. Join me today in pledging support to strengthen UNEP and its activities. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now and with great pleasure my joy to mark the kickoff of the UNEP at 50 commemoration, which will be held throughout 2021 and 2022. And we look forward to welcoming the world to the UNEP at 50 and the UNEA 5th next year. This commemoration event is important. It affords us an opportunity for both celebration as well as reflection. The reality that we face today is sobering. We mark this event at a time when the world is striving to find ways to address record levels of environmental degradation, food insecurity, poverty, as well as unemployment. Indeed, projections for future generations are bleak, demanding urgent and decisive action from us today. It is increasingly evident that environmental crises are part of the journey ahead. Wildfires, hurricanes, high temperature records, unprecedented winter chills, plagues of locusts, floods, and droughts have become so commonplace that they do not always make our news headlines. These increasing adverse weather and climatic occurrences sound a warning bell that calls on all of us to attend to the three planetary crises that threaten our collective future, and that is the climate crisis, the biodiversity and nature crisis, and the pollution and waste crisis. This commemoration, therefore, is an opportunity for introspection as well as correction. We should take transformative remedial actions, make correct financial as well as social decisions, and change course when necessary. In promoting our social and economic development agenda, we must strictly adopt the principles of sustainable development and protecting biodiversity. Let me begin by congratulating you, Boris, on your continued stewardship of the Security Council for the month of February 2021. And let me say, Mr. President, that I also welcome this high-level debate as our understanding of climate change continues to reveal its important role as a multiplier of existing threats to international peace and security. The international community has responded elsewhere to the threat of climate change with ambitious solutions that are actually transforming economic development through investment that seeks to minimize environmental, social, as well as governance harms. But I also believe, as has been stated by previous speakers, that to ensure that these new approaches to investment by the public and private sector reach the countries and regions worst hit by climate change. I believe as a start we can recognize that the persistent droughts and constant sea level rises and increasingly frequent extreme weather patterns are reversing economic gains and development gains achieved over decades. The result is increased fragility, increased instability that leads to armed conflict that then comes to the attention of this Security Council. In crafting mandates for conflict resolution and post-conflict resolution, we can do more to ensure that they dovetail with the efforts to deploy climate change mitigation and adaptation measures. And in this regard, I want to applaud the Security Council Resolution 2349 on Lake Chad and 2502 in the Democratic Republic of Congo with regard to MONUSCO that have created measures to address the impact of climate change. Fragile countries experiencing armed conflict or the threat of it receive little public or private investment. The lack of employment and opportunity in turn worsens the political as well as the security crisis. The Council and relevant UN and international financial institutions that respond to its resolutions can help alleviate this challenge by aligning conflict resolution, peacekeeping, humanitarian aid, post-conflict reconstruction with job creation by the domestic private sector. Another important and prompt action that the Council can take to boost peace and security in the most fragile regions in Africa is to act strongly against illicit financial outflows, illicit resource exploitation, terrorism financing, and money laundering. And in this regard, Mr. Prime Minister, I laud you and your government for your efforts in this regard. Doing so immediately boosts the resources available to government to undertake climate change mitigation and offer the public services and goods needed to consolidate and protect our peace. It also disrupts the negative forces who worsen the threat of climate change by making it tougher to tackle its security impact. So in conclusion, Mr. President, let me affirm that Kenya will remain a strong voice for Africa, for the global South, including small island developing states, in making the case for climate change and security nexus. The world expects results and is looking forward to this Security Council to ever more effectively fulfill its mandate. A growing part of that work is likely to involve the conflict impacts of climate change. Once again, Boris, I want to thank you for your invitation and thank you for putting us together. And I also want to thank all the members for their kind attention. Let's get to work. Let's see if we can make some progress towards this great end. Thank you very much. So the implementation of the Council's mandate to maintain global peace and security will only get more difficult with time if climate change remains a persistent course. And rather than wait for a future tipping point, we must redouble our efforts today to direct our resources and multilateral frameworks of all our rule-based international orders to mitigate the effects of climate change. While the bulk of this work is happening outside the Security Council, as it should be, nobody with such a strong mandate should step aside from this challenge. And that is why it is one of our priorities in Kenya during our term in the Security Council to clarify the importance of the climate and security nexus. Mr. President, the nexus is already impacting Africa, whose files dominate your Council's agenda. And in this regard, I would ask you to listen to us Africans when we tell you that there is a clear link that has impacted tangibly and therefore needs urgent solutions. Africa, unfortunately, will suffer the worst consequences of climate change, despite being the least responsible for global greenhouse gases. And projected climate changes for Africa suggest a future of increased water insecurity, decreased agricultural yields, encroaching desert, as well as damaged coastal infrastructure. Examples abound on the consequences. The drought-stricken Horn of Africa, our part of the world, the drying of the Lake Chad Basin, the shrinking Sahel and savanna grasslands have worsened economic vulnerabilities and set in motion political, demographic, migratory dynamics that increase the threat of insurgency and violent extremism. Indeed, I do hope that the Council will listen more carefully and respond to the new innovative tools for climate-related conflict prevention and resilience building that can emerge from Peace-Building Commission and the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and the UN Environmental Programme. And I strongly urge these bodies to link early warning systems that map climate change hotspots to decision-making. Tools that enable conflict prevention at national, regional, as well as international levels. Such tools include the building of a dynamic and accessible modeling at the national, regional levels that allow government and the multilateral, as well as private sector, to deploy solutions in a security-conscious, forward-looking manner. For such innovative work to have policy impact, it will require democratized access to critical data and much more data sharing with African institutions, engineers, as well as researchers.
Africa of all the continents has probably contributed the least to the global.
Sincere appreciation for his efforts.
Spark conflicts. In addition,
We'll have to deal with the security impacts of climate change.
it is our fundamental responsibility to prevent them.
And to map out a coherent approach, aiming for a working consensus.
Collective effort.